8-figure, bulldog. I mean, if someone's going to break your expectations, Alex, it's going to be the warrior. Absolute soul in every tick. These are very special individuals.
The student is the quintessential individual that as a coach, I would reference all of our junior traders. If you're looking for the ultimate learning qualities, traits, read this chapter.
The most consistent, the most ruthless, hence the racer, who has zero slack in his trading, will again break your expectations.
The money's gone and he has to restart. And a chapter for those out there who feel that everything's lost.
The 8-figure traders are true innovators, true pioneers. They dominate their niche.
You're not going to evolve the traders if the risk management isn't evolving. It's a holistic system that's not linear, that has non-linear opportunity sets to deploy non-linear conviction.
That is how you should be thinking. That are the things that truly matter. Your strategy or whatever, how you conceptualize markets will change a million times over.
We are officially announcing what we've been keeping under wraps for over 3 years. On March 27, 2025, we will be publishing Traders of Our Time, Navigating the Market's Impossible Landscape, both in hardback and ebook. This is the book we've always wanted to write.
We took 10 elite traders, all of them 7- and 8-figure professionals, and broke down their stories and careers into a 500-page deep dive. It's packed with practices, lessons, and heuristics. But what truly sets this book apart is its focus on thinking upstream. Because the real edge isn't in indicators, rules, or chart patterns.
It's in the understanding of the metagame, the deeper forces that make or break trading careers. These career patterns are consistent, often trap-ridden, and absolutely crucial for success, far more than any single trading strategy. This book is for aspiring professionals looking to break in, and even for those 10-year veterans who need to reinvent themselves and their business. In the lead up to March 27, I'll be reviewing the book chapter by chapter with my co-author Bogdan, giving a brief look into each chapter and the insights within. And to make sure you don't miss anything, we'll be posting these videos every single week, so you can follow along as we explore the ideas behind the book. And if you cannot wait, go to tradersofourtime.com right now. Sign up and you'll get to read the first chapter for free, so you stay ahead and in the loop. Now I'll join in conversation with Bogdan to discuss the genesis of the book and the very first chapter. Bogdan, this is just an incredible moment. Our very first video out of a series of at least 10 videos of a book that's been 3 years in the making, a book that is capturing the stories of perhaps some of the greatest traders in the future space over the last decade. Traders whose performance has really pushed the boundaries of what's possible. And what's extremely exciting is that we've been capturing these stories over the last couple of years. And this is a story of traders. And before we go into why and what we're trying to achieve with this book, this is a story of approximately 10 traders who have changed the very nature of what it means to perform, and that's what we wanted to capture in the book. But when we step onto the London first floor, what's the most fascinating aspect is that you step onto that floor and you're stepping into a coliseum where there are traders and a team collectively of a 9-figure trading team. Multiple 7-figure traders, multiple 8-figure traders, and in combination, these traders have rewritten in a space where machine, AI, quantitative strategies were becoming the dominant fashion, and these traders bucked that trend. And they held up the flag of the human trader. And if I just segue straight away into you, and I think we'll go to and fro before we go into the details, but the most exciting part is this chapter 1 that we're speaking about today is available on tradersofourtime.com. You can download this first chapter. We decided to give the chapter away for free for you to get a deep understanding and almost a gateway into the rest of the book, to get that sense, that feeling, the direction, how we looking to write that story. And a little bit of a backstory. This is you and I getting together, me approaching you, back in 2020, 21, saying we've got a collection of traders that we don't want their lessons, their journeys, their stories to be lost forever. And we want to resurrect the most incredible story of traders, many of them who came from the abyss of lost accounts, having to start over, This might resonate with many people, some having lost accounts of over 7 figures overnight, not through any of their own mistake. And resurrecting that story, I approach you, you're a junior trader at the time, but someone who was a deep, thoughtful thinker, and you've already written quite a few blogs on the Axia Futures website, and I saw your natural skill of what a great writer you are. And so we discussed, we had a conversation, and you took pen to paper, and we went on this journey together with 80 hours of interviews. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for, I know it's been a long journey, it's been a tough journey, but it's been a creative journey. And we want to give this story and these stories to everyone out there. And so if I put it on to you now, why would someone want to read this book? Who is this book for? And why will this book change people's perspective on what trading is?
This book, Alex, is a marker of where we have come from and where we are about to go in our profession. It is a companion guide for traders for now and in the future, at the very least, up until the next century, of understanding what it means to become and to live life and to expand our profession as a professional trader. It is to understand that there is no amateur league in trading, never was. To understand that there is now, we're dealing with an environment that demands ruthless professionalism and development and so on. And it's, as you said, Alex, to take the experiences that would turn normally into dust and to immortalize them through the power of story and the power of this book. So it's been a very long journey, and I'm very thankful of your appreciation. We've just come out of the cave, the proverbial cave, and I feel it's a very cathartic moment for myself. If I have 5 seconds of indulgence, I've been wanting to announce this with you for a very, very long time. I'm very glad we can finally do so, and I'm extremely excited. It's going to be a very painful wait up until March 27th. So for all those listening right now, the book is coming out globally, available in March 27, 2025. And as you mentioned, Alex, it is called, the main title of the book, Traders of Our Time. So you can see how we've drawn on the immortality strand. But secondly, the subtitle of the book is Navigating the Market's Impossible Landscape. And I think hopefully readers, once they get through the book, they'll realize that there is a multi-layered meaning towards both titles. But just focusing on the subtitle, it is all about navigation and not solving the markets. It is navigating a complex and ever-changing non-linear landscape that will also mean that the trader will be not the same trader as he is now. He will be a different trader in 5, 10 years, 15 years, and so on. And so this book, Alex, is the need to understand, to think upstream, to realize that your indicators of patterns and whatever strategy is now is at best transient, and to realize that there are very few things that matter, and we want to capture those things that matter. It is to look at the principles, the heuristics, the learning frameworks, and the things that dominates all else. And this is why I think, Alex, we were very complementary to each other in writing this book. You have your long list of experience of managing traders, of dealing and leading teams, and you have that sort of top-down approach. And myself to approach it as a suffering journeyman of trying to understand this bountiful, cruel game that is proprietary trading. And so we approached it in that. So I thank you so much, Alex. And I think as I said, I think this is the moment where people realize how far this game has evolved and how far professional proprietary trading has evolved. And how much space there is to go.
And that's what this book is all about, is uncovering many of the learning principles as we dissect stories, traders' journeys, traders' trades. It's encapsulating in each trader the whole diversity of the ecosystem of edge and performance. What's extremely exciting, having been involved in the markets in the proprietary trading sense, in the UK for 20 years, and seeing the evolution and seeing how many generational evolutionary twists we've had over the last 20 years, but also being extremely excited of uncovering, because that was part of our journey, uncovering these universal principles. You mentioned earlier on, that could be your companion guide in 100 years' time, like many of the anecdotes from reminiscence of a stock operator. And how are we going to capture the foundational learning principles in a so-called complex game, but with our top traders having very simple yet effective approach in many manners. And so this book, again, is capturing a team of some of the greatest futures traders that I've been around for the last 20 years. And it has been phenomenal. Our journey has gone from Poland to London to Cyprus, over 80 hours of interviews and distilling. You and I going afterwards, having our conversations. We just had a 3-hour marathon with the traders. And if I just stop there, those marathons are with traders, and the book and the characters we've written in Aliases. Can you elaborate there a little bit for me?
Yes. So,
and why we did this?
Absolutely. So each of the 10 traders have an alias. For example, the warrior, the razor, the sphinx, the collector, the godfather, and so on. Their alias primarily, of course, is reflective of either their story or their approach to trading and so on. For very practical reasons, some wish to remain anonymous, and therefore we gave them, of course, that option. Some people will take off their alias and come out in a public way in the future. So we gave them the option to by default, to remain private, and if they wish to in the future, they can do so. But, and here's the extremely important part, I think that is the core central nexus of the book. By having an alias, it allows you to think of these characters in a memorable way. For example, what would the warrior do in this situation? What would the student do in this situation? And it allows you to treat them as if they're characters on stage. And you can then think of them as people in your mind that you can pull out from a repertoire and see yourself within them. When you face a career crisis calamity like the hero, you'll think of him and you understand your story through the hero's story. And I said a very important word there, story. And that, I really truly believe, is the foundational difference between what makes an immortal book and a very transient, bullet-pointed blog post that's been expanded to a business book that proliferates the modern publishing landscape. That is why Reminiscence of a Stock Operator 100 years later is very powerful, because it captures the person's story, Jesse Livermore's story, beautifully. And that book will be just as relevant in 100 years' time, in 200 years' time. And I will also say that Traders of Our Time, the book, will be just as relevant from now and in 100 years plus, because it's captured these traders in a moment in time. How do you best show infinity? It's by capturing the finite. How do you show big? You look at the small, and so on. And we've captured them, and they are now immortalized forever in this time capsule of a book. And that is what will make the story resonant, and that's why we talk about Alex. We start off with this book. How do you engage best with a book? How do you learn from a book? And people don't learn from a book because they don't physically engage with it. They don't pull out their pen or paper. They don't write down the marginalia. They don't write down their notes. And we implore people to do that, because you will interact with the book that way. What happens when you are trading 5 years later? You've evolved as a trader. You've evolved as a person. You pull out your book, and 5 years later, it's a whole new book. And then you also see how you interacted with the book 5 years ago. And imagine having that layer over layer, and imagine how you'd look at the book in 15 years. And you can't do that if there's no story involved. You can't do that if there's no characters involved, and so on. And that is why I truly think where you are in your career will be very reflected based on the chapters that resonate with you. And we've done that very strategically in layering the orders of the chapters. We begin with the razor for very specific reasons, and then we layer further and further down. And not only because of the way we build upon certain principles and heuristics in the book, but also the way how the relevancy for that trader. Some people starting off, they might find a lot of things resonant in the razors chapter. A lot of people who are 15 years in the game and they need to redevelop, restart, kickstart their career, understand how to develop and learning how to learn. Another way to summarize this book is a whole manifesto on learning how to learn in this game. And then it can pull out chapter 7, the student, who's done just that, who is a story in recreation, in understanding that the best traders are a product of process, not to be necessarily touched by the gods, but there's an element of that too, which we will explore, of course. And that is the wonderful technology of story.
And those 10 aliases, those 10 characters, effectively, it's a guide, over a timeline of your career that will electrify your cognitive abilities. It will create belief. It will strike emotional chords. And these 10 characters over a timeline should assist you over your lifespan as a trader. So every single time you're faced with a certain crisis or crises, and crises don't ever subside. You made your first million, you made your first 2 million, they keep on coming back. And there's a new way to evolve. And so these 10 stories is in order to aid you through your entire life journey. From point zero, starting, we discussed this in the hero chapter, to potentially existential crisis when you've made tens of millions, and what to next. Mm-hmm. And so each part of the chapter is there. Each chapter, each story, with all of its learning principles, is for a trader to embark. And then when he gets, he might be on day zero. And when he gets to, 20 years, he might need to revisit, as you mentioned, a part of the book. Now, these special traders that we describe, and they're special because, as we always mention, there's been 1,000 ghosts before them that have not made it in trading. There are many people who have tried this game, not understood just through the nature of the marketing in the world of speculation and trading, lifestyle on the beach. And these are professional athletes of the highest order. And even professional athletes of the highest orders doesn't guarantee success. And so if we now go back and we speak about this chapter 1, which will be available on tradersofourtime.com for free, where people can download, what do we expect in chapter 1?
Chapter 1 is all about setting the scene for the traders. But as the chapter says, and you can read it right now, to understand the traders, you have to understand the space. And to understand the space, you need to understand the desks. So chapter 1 is quite literally the trading desks. And it is pretty much, it talks about it's actually just a walkthrough, for example, the London trading floor. It is quite literally, okay? It's more than that, but that's how it's structured. So, we take the reader through, up the stairs and to the floor. And who do you see? It's a large part of the characters you will meet throughout the book. And we can actually, should we do that, Alex? Let's quickly let's do a walk with us right now.
Let's create this visual journey for those who are watching the video now.
Absolutely. And it'll guide us through all the chapters. Yeah. Okay. So you enter the room, and depending on what's going on.
And this is London where? You just describe, just before we enter this London training floor.
Yes. So this is the first floor of 3 on the London, in the London office on Ensley Street. You walk into Ensley Street, number 4, and you walk up the stairs, double flight. You enter the first floor, and you're either greeted by the largest, most crazy assault on the senses that very few professions can provide. Your extremities tingle because today we're going to have history-making events, and you're not going to be sitting there passively watching them on the headline, on your phone, on the commute back home. You're actually involved. You're involved. And, people will be writing about the markets did this, they did that. And that day you were involved in trading those markets, And you feel that. It's an intoxicating feeling. Okay?
These are skin in the game practitioners.
Yes. And if you have a taste of that feeling, you'll never forget it. Or you might be greeted on a very dull and boring day, which is the very realistic part of trading. And we can go from one to the other 3 times in an afternoon. Okay.
The ebbs and flows.
The ebbs and flows. But let's say we walk in on a day where people are engaged and there's nothing absolutely calamity going on. People are engaged. So you walk in, boom, you turn to your right immediately, and you spot the desk of the Godfather. The Godfather is a veteran of 20 plus years now. He survived 3 career reinventions, changing strategies from everything from a very highly consistent spread trader of the boom bubble shots fly, an ex-TED trader who survived the blow up of the TED spread in the 2007-2008 crisis, and has now reinvented himself as a volatility chasing macro order flow news trader. And that is what dominates that side of the room, the more Mediterranean side of the room, shall we say.
And I just want to pause you there just to reiterate, the Godfather, who's this chapter for? And from my perspective, the Godfather, as I just stall you at a traffic light stop sign before we go to the next trader on the floor, for me is a trader that has proved that you can evolve regardless of age and regardless of family size, that you can adapt to every environment and have still your best years ahead. So it's for those traders out there who have experience, who are reaching a crisis of a strategy, of an approach, and able to navigate and create what humans do so well, but is often forgotten, our ability to adapt. And how do you adapt? So what is the Godfather? Who's the Godfather for you?
The Godfather are for the old believers, the old dogmatic guard, who don't think, again, reinvention is possible, who don't think that news trading, the way the prop scene handles news trading is possible, especially in a very flowy go with the market kind of approach. It is for those who think having family is the death of your trading career. In fact, it has helped him numerous times. He talks a lot about this. It is for those who also need to understand what is the baseline cost and discipline required in this game. And it's not discipline in terms of having the willpower to not click because you're upset and now you got to make your money back and now you're going to just blow up everything. No, it is the boring part. It is show up at your damn desk every single day, regardless of what's going on outside of your life. And if a father of three who is older than you, let's say in your early 20s, can do that consistently day in, day out, then why can't you? Who is single, bachelor, living with mom and dad, no pressures, anything. And then you roll out of bed rambling in at 11 a.m. and he's already like made the day's worth. That is who you could be.
Years worth.
Yes, your year's worth. Actually, yes, indeed, your year's worth. So that is for those people to understand. You don't understand speed or how fast someone can run until you've seen one of the best sprinters in the world run to realize that a human being can move like that, It's kind of like expectations breaking. And if, again, the book is many, many things. And to those readers, another way to summarize the book is it's gonna break your expectations in many, many ways.
And how you perceive trading.
Yes.
So that's the Godfather. So let's now quickly start moving through the rest of the room.
Yes.
Who's next? It's in the Mediterranean corner.
And so right behind the Godfather is none other than yourself, Alex, with your yoga mats and your salt lamps. At least you were there positioned, of course, before you made the move to Cyprus, which is a whole other story, but you were there for a very long time. Then we go beyond your desk, and then we get to the captain of the pirates, the warrior, who is a wine-red blooded Cypriot, who is the quintessential, fast news flow, trading, aggression, 8-figure, bulldog. I mean, if someone's going to break your expectations, Alex, it's going to be the warrior. Okay, he's the embodiment of just absolute soul in the game, soul in every tick kind of trader.
Truly soul in every tick.
Soul in every tick who can actually have his own book. And he is the kind of character, I mean, look, these are very special individuals. Each one of them are basically characters who just walked out of a novel. But the warrior is in a league of his own in terms of the contradictions the man has to live with, the personality contradictions, how he can go from crazy manic screaming and shouting at his desk to turning around and being a very pleasant gentleman to the person next to him, and then right back in the action, a very Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. So that's the warrior. Now climb over his huge collection of monitors in the Pirate's Cove, and you get to the Sphinx. And the Sphinx is also a story of someone who took about nearly a decade to turn profitable.
Almost as deputy captain.
Yes, this is deputy captain. The Sphinx, who is absolutely loaded with, and cross-referenced by many people in the industry who know him, insane deep macroeconomic knowledge. In a room full of people who have deep macroeconomic knowledge, but they still credit him as he's on another level. Fantastic memory to boot. Someone who whittles the game down in a very unique fashion, in a very questioning-like way, which he is actually placed right at the end of the book for reasons I'll leave for his chapter.
For you to smash more expectations.
Yeah, just if you're like a bone, if your bones have been broken halfway through the book and they've been reset, we're just going to break your bones one last time on the very last chapter. Okay, so I'll leave all of that for the Sphinx for readers to enjoy. We go behind the Sphinx and we get to the Collector. And the Collector is actually suited. So Alex, the way they're positioned in the room is very telling. And you do this beautifully. This is a key skill of knowing how to matchmake and play matchmaker with different kind of edge and putting people together. So you transition from the Mediterranean, volatility chasing captains to the Collector, who is the embodiment of both edges. He sits like if there's a spectrum, he sits right in the middle. He's the definition of someone who's learned how to repurpose things from the trading floor and make it his own.
When you say the middle, just describe that met with, but we haven't spoken about the other side. So you're saying he's almost sandwiched between the Mediterranean.
Yes.
And what other demographics?
And the colder, more Northern European climate with temperaments to suit.
So now the collector is in the middle of that.
Yes. So he suits both temperaments, both approaches, and he sits right in the middle. And the collector, as you know, as we will discuss, is also the founding trader who's gone with you to Cyprus. And then behind the collector sits a trio: the student, the hero, and the engineer. And those guys are your market profile, piecemeal, puzzle-solving aficionados who approach the markets in entirely different ways at different extremes, but often, as it is in trading and in life, extremes often have many similarities too. And there sits another 8-figure trader, the engineer, who is, again, the with you joined, you are perhaps the progenitors or the people who've seeded the profile to be used in an entirely different way.
The market profile, which you elaborate more in the book.
Yes,
in his chapter.
And let me make this expressly clear, Alex. We talk so much about journeys and stories, but so much of the book is absolutely riddled with pure street fighting application tactics right now. Okay. So it's very much a spectrum of everything from the story to like, okay, how the hell do you use the profile? How do I use these order flow tactics? How do I use these kind of things? Okay, so it's a spectrum. And then in the engineers chapter and in the heroes chapter, we talk about exclusively in different ways their usage of the market profile. So there is your 8-figure centerpiece trader profile. If we switch over to the hero quickly, the hero is our young buck who's grown, very fast. There's an amazing. I'll leave it to you. How would you describe the hero, Alex?
The hero, and we go through this in detail when we do our video on the heroes chapter, but he is someone that has this maturity and commitment beyond his years. And that gravitated towards some of the biggest traders on the floor that took him under his wing. And it's amazing for all young traders out there, if you're sitting or you're in the company of giants on a floor, the best way to be attracted to them and for them to take you under their wing is your ability to show ruthless focus. And he started his career on the DOM, and he is a trader that has this almost OCD application that started on the DOM and then was complemented later on, just near that unlock key on the profile, but just a religious practitioner of commitment is how I would describe the hero.
And remember, what hurts your life helps your trading, and what helps your trading hurts your life. The flip side of that trait, as it is expedient in trading, is that he is a very obsessive kind of personality. He will go into things 100%. And as we say in his chapter, a car with no brakes can only stop so many ways. And here's the story of, again, which is why we call him the hero, very, very, very classic hero's journey of the rise, the fall, and the rise. And we document all through that in this chapter.
And the second rise is always the one that most people don't do.
Yes.
Because you can rise.
Yes.
You can start from nothing, you can rise. And when you fall, the resurrection that second time round is significantly more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it.
Yeah. You went from a 3 to 300 lot trader, then an 800 lot trader, peak bulletproof mode. And then
multiple 6-figure days.
7-figure trader, multi-7-figure trader. And then boom, within 2 weeks, within 1 week, took a 250K hit and another 250K hit. And that was the beginning of, not the end, but the beginning of the trial that was to come. And there we meet him, we interviewed him, just a year later after all those events and so on. So we captured that in his story. So that is the hero. So we tease that a bit of how his story continues. And then we have the student. And the student is someone who, as the name implies, such a great model for how to approach the learning how to learn aspect of the job. Would you like to introduce him a bit further, Alex?
I was hoping you'd ask me.
Yes. Yeah.
The reason being because it is my favorite chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told you this.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it's my favorite chapter, being a performance coach, looking after many traders over the last, I've been in the game for 20 years, been building teams for over 15 years. The student is because I feel en masse we can replicate his practices. But one of the most enduring qualities is his humility. his humility in learning, his humility in his ability to ask someone of less experience than him a genuine question and genuinely have these open ears to listen. And here's a trader who also had to transform a couple of times, was on the brink, was not quite sure if he'd be around. And, all these traders have their resurrection stories. Okay, the warrior was up after week 1 of trading and never had a down year since. He is that outlier. He's that sample. We speak about it in the Warriors chapter. But the student is the quintessential individual that as a coach, I would reference all of our junior traders. If you're looking for the ultimate learning qualities, traits, read this chapter. And I know we shared this chapter with a couple of our internal traders who are on a path where they were struggling to evolve and adapt. And some of his principles from methodologies in journaling is just going to unlock a process that you can follow. Some of our other traders, the templating of them becomes more challenging. But the student, we cross some incredible topics. We navigate unbelievable landscapes in his chapter and the power of what journaling does for you as a discretionary futures day trader. So, the student now, this past month, he's up almost $1 million. In January 2025 as a function of all the hard work, like a sequoia tree, accumulating its assets for many years before it has its exponential growth. And so he was accumulating his assets, not receiving the reciprocal response of a positive equity curve, but his learning assets were developing. And then all of a sudden, there is that germination of performance that then moves at an accelerated rate. So an incredible chapter on its own is just a powerhouse. And many of yourself writing that chapter captured. I remember reading the chapter the first time after the structure of this book. A lot of times, me leading many of the interviews, you capturing it, you writing and putting together the artistry and the storytelling. And it was incredible execution. And my chapter that when we went to the Bahamas, I printed the student chapter. We went to the Bahamas on a high performance retreat. We had Professor Angus Fletcher, who works with the U.S. Special Forces, join us. And this chapter for 3-day elite traders workshop with some of our top traders, I shared this chapter to everyone and said, read it. So it's possibly one of my top 2 chapters of the book.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we, of course, talked about 7 traders. And just think how special that room is, Alex. I still can't get over that group of traders. And there's still more in the sphere. And, but just in that book.
There's a couple of more traders around that, but we picked those 7 traders out of that group of 12.
And moving from the London office, you will then be met with, if you go to Poland.
You take a plane from Luton.
Yes. And then you go into a very spaceship-like modern building because the Ensley Street, London, is the classic London townhouse. But what you'll then notice...
Edwardian architecture, is it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, or Georgian? I don't know.
What you'll then notice, to understand one, you look at the opposite. You notice that there are actually glass walls and doors in the Poland office. Then you realize, in fact, all of London has wooden doors for reasons which might be obvious to some people, to survive the ruckus that happens in there. But... as we say in the book, in the chapter 1, that, if the institutions, if the banks are the Navy, then we're now among pirates, being the prop traders, to steal and repurpose a Steve Jobs kind of quote. But now you enter the pirates' polite society, if there is one, okay? So you go to Poland and you meet the Razor. Again, like you will keep saying, the Razor is a very special trader, and they're all special traders, but, we're dealing with the people by normal standards, very abnormal in so many ways, in both good and bad. And the Razor has created, as he said himself, his own house of trading. It's something he wanted to do for a very long time. He developed meticulously. Let's talk about his office, because I'll tell you a lot about the man and the trader. Meticulously spent 4 years before he launched it live, just as COVID hit, which coincides with his story. 4 years meticulously handcrafting, designing, because he comes from an engineering background, designing his wooden desk, the server room, soundproofing the server room, understanding all the technology required, itemizing and inventorying all the hardware in the silent click mice. I will say wallpaper, but it's more than wallpaper. He will think I am downgrading the office by calling it wallpaper. The beautiful wallpaper and the abstract paintings and the smell. The London floor is full of sweat and bargaining and pleading and food smells and that locker room smell by 4 p.m. and you just know you're in a room of red-blooded risk takers. But the Razor house of trading is a luxury department store at all times. He has complete control of his environment. He has, the carpets and his choice and its cleanliness are as important as trade execution. And he's quite literally, if there was perfectionist, he'd be the example in the dictionary. To him, there's no downgrade. Everything has to be perfect by default. So we're dealing with a trader who is the most consistent, who among a group of very remarkably steady traders, the most consistent, the most ruthless, hence the Razor, who has zero slack in his trading, who, when you understand the nature of how he trades and his consistency, will again break your expectations, Alex. We went there, October 21, espresso in hand, sitting at his computer. He showed us his Excel spreadsheet of so many statistics, but again, the most important was his costs and P&L and performance. And what stretched across the screen was a huge green, like a T on the golf course. Green T stretching across the screen, and that went all the way back for years and years and years and years. Can you tell me more about the Razor?
The Razor's chapter is one of the most heartfelt, incredible chapters. There's so many great chapters. They're all great. But the Razor is a trader whose account, 7-figure trading account, disappeared overnight. He was in his 40s, hard work, over a decade. The previous firm he was at mismanages capital, no fault of his own, comes in the next morning, money's gone. The money's gone and he has to restart. Birth of Axia. And that birth of Axia and him, the very following year, literally, he was in the market for 4 minutes, over 200 trades and made $1 million. We speak about these trades in his chapter. Here's a chapter with everything, his back against the wall. And many traders who have their back against the wall, what's your reaction function? And my gosh, his reaction function on inner belief. And this, again, is a trader, you meet him outside of trading, you wouldn't think of this silent assassin of the markets. And his story, and he's also a trader who had a $3.5 million day. He left probably on that day another $3.5 million. He could have had approximately a $7 million day back in 2020 on a strategy that we speak about in the book. We speak about this trade strategy, this trade that was over a decade in the making. Now, he carved many other strategies during those 10 years, and we speak about his process and his approach. And here's a trader, lost everything, started over, moved on so quickly, and actually started elevating and flying. Within a year's time, made back all of his money. And so the Razor is a very close friend as well. He's having his 50th birthday this year, and his best years were growing for years after. He started fairly late in the so-called prop day trading game, but he is a trader and a chapter for those out there who feel that everything is lost, and for those as well to understand how you can find strategies with potentially no time exposure in the markets, depending on your personality type. So that's the Razor for me.
Absolutely. Beautiful, Alex. Thank you. Let's now jump to so you have the Razor in his beautiful office in the Polite Society, and you look over across him and you are met with the Voyager. And the Voyager is someone who had success early on. And then that led him to numerous negative paths, which of course you don't realize at the time. And this is part of the book. These are the things that can make or break careers. And often it is too late to go back. And these are the only things you realize when you have seen many, many, many traders do this, and this is why it's important to capture this in the book. It is as much, capturing it for the sake of capturing it, immortalizing it, but it's as much as a practical guide for the traders who will come on the Axia floor, now and in the future. And it's understanding of all these repeat, yourself and Mario talk about, you have quick success, that leads to a lot of negative career decisions. And what's the point of performing and getting all these things right when you make the bad career decisions that's going to kill you anyway, and you return to dust? So that is, and the Voyager basically is a way for us to tie a lot of the strands that we've been building out throughout the book. He's the second last chapter, and we sort of land the conceptual airplane in his chapter to analyze proof in the pudding of, comparing these principles in his chapter. So I'll leave that for the Voyager. And then lastly, we have the Adventurer. The adventurer who is not tied to any one office. In fact, he is allergic to an office being tied down, which is a very unique and rare. So think about all these high performers. We have the one trader who does indeed travel and trade, which I know is an annoying stereotype of the, or shall we say, the so-called lifestyle, whatever that means in our trading. It's often advertised as an attraction. And we show that with the adventurers to realize how unique and how impossible it is for everyone else who is a professional trader, and how basically it's not common. It's not the usual thing. It's a very uncommon thing. Yeah. But that ties into his, as you mentioned, if the student is the model and the person who can be replicated, the adventurer is the one trader who just cannot be replicated in any way. Can you tell us more, Alex, why that is?
Yeah, and just on your point, diametrically opposite to the student
in every single way. Yes,
and that chapter explores the adventures of the adventurer.
Yeah,
it explores him participating in exceptionally large size of the markets, and as we explore this trader, is asking us how long can this anomaly last? Is the question, because every single time I thought, how can this adventurer keep on pulling this off? I said, he won't be able to do this for another year, and he keeps on defying the odds. And so, but a student that built a strong substrate in the beginning of his career, being on a floor, developing his foundation. And so his chapter is exploring aspects of developing some underground foundations from backgrounds in previous spaces, such as his professional skiing days, and how that actually aided him automatically on almost skill efficiency in trading. We explore these aspects of these accessory or these adjacent, as you mentioned in the book, these adjacent possibles that support your core game. Do you want to just quickly touch on these adjacent possibles?
The adjacent possible is one core idea we leverage from. So, we also leverage in a large part of the book is making implicit things traders, may not realize or readers may not realize, and making them very explicit. And sometimes making that explicit is by taking from other domains to reflect on our own or the work done by others. So one of the things we use Stephen Johnson's book, Where Good Ideas Come From. And, he talks there about, quoting Johnson, the so-called, or not so-called, the called adjacent possible. And it's a sort of a framework a trader can use to understand how he can develop skills and grow as a trader. Because very often, to leverage more on Johnson, so many traders see so far ahead of time that they try and develop that way of those skills, that way of being, too far ahead of their time. And the evolutionary leap, for many reasons, learning, skills, financial situation, because often where you're on your career determines the kind of risks you can or cannot take, or you must now take. And the adjacent possible is to realize how actually you can go from one skill development to the very next room, and not skip down the hallway, but just go from room to room to room to room. And often that is the nature of developing skills in an open-ended environment. And here's the thing, as Angus Fletcher, the immortal quote, in my opinion, from Angus Fletcher, if you can predict it, is it really that innovative? The best traders, the 8-figure traders, are true innovators, true pioneers. They are a unique product. And like every business that is enduring, they have a huge moat. They're unique. They dominate their niche. And to become a product of a very unique trader, you have to develop this very open-ended environment where you start from a replicable core, and you expand out and become a very unique person that cannot be replicated by anyone else. And the adjacent possible thinking about that is a kind of mental framework to understand that kind of development. Again,
and how you can go about doing it.
Yes, and it's about, again, that is how we might take something that you might have realized implicitly and make it explicit in the book. So that's the adjacent possible there. Now, lastly, Alex, I just want to touch upon, so everything we talked about, it's the searchlight that begins in chapter 1 and it sort of illuminates the rest of the book. The traders, the kind of principles, and it gives you a feeling for the book. So again, as Alex said, tradersofourtime.com. You can, if you cannot wait between now and March, you can get the chapter 1 right now, the thing we're discussing, very, very quickly. So, Alex, the readers will be greeted by the traders, and then all of a sudden, we discuss what basically became the founding story, the founding event.
The Genesis
of Axia, which has been told in a few different ways, but we do the full narrative story in that chapter. Can you tell us why was that day important to capture, and probably how it's kind of like an example of what makes Axia special?
That Genesis story is shrouded or encapsulated with, at that time, huge amounts of pain, huge amounts of what next. And this was back in 2016 when overnight, my original core group of traders, 4 in London, a couple in Poland, lost entire trading accounts. And having to pivot fairly quickly, not knowing what the future holds, but still understanding that we can still fish in the markets. There's still skills that haven't been fully realized. These traders weren't, knocking out the park yet. Some occasional ones had $10,000 days. Some of the junior traders at the time, were doing their $1,000 days. And this group of traders went on, you fast forward, to becoming some of the monsters of the industry. 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000, $1 million days. Fast forward a couple of years later. But at 2016, when we lost all of our trading accounts, some traders lost smaller amounts, but they're smaller traders at the time, between $10,000 to $50,000. Some lost over $250,000, and a select few lost over $1 million, well north of $1 million. And so having to pivot quickly and starting a week as a team, the birth of Axia, before Brexit. And that week before Brexit was the moment of what is possible, what will this new future hold for us? And what we decided is that we are going to collaborate and share, and the extended mind, which we speak about in the chapter, the social transactive memory that we will go and engage in, starting that week before Brexit, in possibly a multi-generational event where the markets were moving multiple standard deviations from how they usually move, almost moving the British pound and some of the biggest traded products on the world were moving like a meme coin, within a few hours. And our traders, and we speak about it in this chapter, Traders of Our Time, chapter 1, that you can download for free now, of myself and our meeting with Mario and Roger. So they were part of the group called the FCT, group of companies, been around since 1984. Mm-hmm. And we decided we wanted to partner with a team that we trusted, because it was very hard for us to trust the London property industry after all of this money disappeared. And so we serendipitously met Mario on a trip to Cyprus, the center of the universe, as many as we think here when we're here in Cyprus, that we met Mario. Somehow, a month and a bit later, the firm collapsed, and
the old firm
collapsed. We contacted Mario. We had a meeting with him and Roger, who said there's a couple of us stranded traders licking our wounds from lost accounts. He got us up trading very quickly. We formed a team both here in London, very small team. We rented out a very small WeWork, the size of this podcast room, for about 4 traders, super tight. And that team grew to be the top, fast forward 6-7 years later, the leading team in the property industry space. And that morning on Brexit, we were putting on these strategies, these opening strategies, which we explore in the book, Traders of Our Time. And these strategies, our traders were sweating, on the mouse as the markets were about to open. Describe all the markets as they, just gapping massively across, the global universe. And our traders are now putting maximum size, starting completely fresh and trusting with conviction that there's going to be an opportunity here. And on that opportunity, thank goodness to whichever trading gods were above us that day, it all worked out. The traders all got up. I wasn't on that floor that morning. I was waiting to come in. I was actually stuck at home speaking to Mario and saying, Alex, the traders are all in with maximum size. What's going on here? So there's an opening strategy, and he trusted us. And there's a lot of trust in this process. And he trusted giving the trader size, and all the rest is history. We've described that trade. And from there on, the team just grew. People started in the industry to start saying, who are these traders at Axia? We started publishing some of our live trading of our traders. And effectively, these traders single-handedly gave breath back to the industry of what's possible. That's what we explore in chapter 1, the trust, the story, the meetings, the starting before Brexit, the strategy in the morning, the risk being taken on. Traders now, some made 10,000, some made 50,000, and then the rest was history. And this team grew to be potentially what it is now today, the top futures prop trading firm in London and potentially in Europe at the moment. I don't know much about the American prop space, but we probably even breach those boundaries because we have many people come to train with us from America. So we have breached these boundaries purely based on the performance of these Genesis traders.
And that's the thing, Alex. You see, we talk about that Brexit night, we talk about the trade, the outcome of the trade, and so on. And that story in that trade encapsulates the specialness of these traders, the specialness of Axia, but the requirements of the trader that is to come in the future, the new professional that will dominate in the future. In an image, I hope readers who have enjoyed chapter 1 will see that it demands the non-linear application and mindset for non-linear opportunities, and not just the non-linear practitioner, but everyone else revolving around that trader has the same attitude, meaning that the risk management and the approach to risk and conceptualizing all of that has also evolved like the trader and will have to continue evolving as opportunities change in the markets, which is what you and Mario as a team do very, very well. And chapter 1 talks about the very special room in the Axia London office, the risk room, central nexus where Mario sits, and we talk about his role and so on. And that is what had to evolve as well as the trader. And that is the difference between in a professional setting versus in a retail setting, in that the size that you get and the opportunities that you get are not based on the amount that you have in your account. Of course, there is a relationship, but not like, how a retail broker gives you a certain amount of size per account you have. It's relationship and trust-based and performance-based. You have that relationship. They know you. They can give you the fireworks knowing you're not going to blow your head off. And then you can meet those opportunities, those non-linear opportunities that grow a trader, that resurrect accounts, that just match the reality of the needs today.
Yeah, and you're speaking about the risk room and speaking about Mario, how he has evolved the entire risk management space. You're not going to evolve the traders if the risk management isn't evolving. It's a holistic system. And if you're trading within a team that doesn't have a risk manager, I think these traders before made good money at the previous firm, but being in this firm, being in Axia with a risk manager is open-minded, has belief, has conviction and trust in his team and in the team skill set, has the financial firepower to support that type of team. And so you need a few component parts to support the entire infrastructure, the deployment of these trades. And
that manages to have relationships with other people in the industry, like futures clearing merchants, brokers, and so on and so forth, banks. That entire infrastructure that a trader, when he clicks his mouse, is this entire supply chain network that supports it, right? Just on your point. And the Mario in this instance, that we connected with, and how you've described in the book, this Atlas Shrugged, supporting these traders above him. But I remember going out for dinners with himself and another trader, and I said, we've got to give this trader, he's on a good run. You can feel his edge in the market in a sweet spot. These go from 1,000 S&P contracts to 2,000 S&P contracts. We'll go have a dinner, we'll talk about the trade, and he would give him the size. And so that non-linear aspect that you're speaking about is what truly separates and distinguish elite performers from the 99.999% of mass traders out there, is that ability in a market that's not linear, that has non-linear opportunity sets to deploy non-linear conviction. But without the risk manager, without a risk manager that's evolved the space, and a risk managers in the past would just sit, have risk screens, have a sheet, when do I stop guys out of the risk manager, and that evolution. And it's for everyone who's reading this book to question risk, to question your relationship with risk. And I'm talking about your relationship with the risk managers and how you're able to leverage yourself, because where there's a great trader, there's a great supporting risk infrastructure, performance coaching infrastructure, like every great tennis player out there. Absolutely. And look, Alex, in the Mario's part, we use a quote, which has been, I know, attributed to many people.
perhaps it's a bit worn, but I think it's an excellent quote. In the context of in the military, that is a famous one, that strategy is for amateurs, but logistics are for professionals.
There we go.
And let's expand that to our trading domain in the sense that everyone wants the tools, the flashy platforms, and so on and so forth. And they are important, but they're more important in one aspect. But the most important is no one ever thinks about the non-sexy stuff, the stuff that goes on. What happens when your computer blows up? You call up your retail broker and they're like, you're a valued customer. Thank you. We'll put you on the call. You're 50th in line. And your short tends to pee when it's exploding and it's
your account
and your account's gone. And that's the least of the problems, especially as you grow. And this is I think the best way to encapsulate, to finish off, Alex, is to realize, and I hope this will break expectations for a lot of people who are interested in this domain. There is no such thing as an amateur league in trading. There is no such thing as, some people ask me, give me a beginner strategy, give me a beginner's market. What's a good market for beginners? There is no such thing as that. It's all or nothing. Trading as a domain requires you to go all the way or you burn up along the way. It's all or nothing. And we're very explicit. That's exactly how we begin the book. It's even before chapter 1, readers will have a very strong warning sign planted in front of them and beyond the disclaimer. You're entering this professional domain, and that is why, that is the core central point of the book. If you're now entering this, it's all or nothing, professional or nothing, what are the things that sustain and create and make or break careers? That is how you should be thinking. That are the things that truly matter. Your strategy or whatever how you conceptualize markets will change a million times over. What the things you can or can't do as a junior trader will be very different to when you're senior, and how what everyone's doing will change. And to finish my point, Alex, ask, for example, anyone that was a professional trader before the end of the, let's say before 2013. Highly different, such a different environment. But what happened after 2013? QE max, turn on the taps, highly accommodative world, volatility is gone. That is why this book is more, as you mentioned, it's a guide, but it's a companion's guide as opposed to a manual. And why is that? Because when you're on the impossible landscape, when the landscape has turned from a lush, beautiful jungle village where everyone can just walk up to you and pluck the easiest fruit and have absolutely no skills, and that turns into an absolute barren wasteland, and you're in your ragged clothes with your shepherd's stick and you have your cloak on you, and the last thing, you can have one thing with you under your arm will be Traders of Our Time, because it's a companion's guide to navigating the challenge that is set before you, and the one after that, and the one after that. You won't even realize the challenges you'll have so many unknowns. You won't even realize the challenges that will be set before you. And you can consult it again and again and again and again. And the greatest victory for us, I truly believe, is for a trader to say, that book saved me, that book affected me so much when I started trading. And then there was a whole new book when I was in my 5th year as a trader. And don't you know, now I'm in my 25th year and it's a whole other book for me. And if someone says that to me, Alex, I think that is exactly what we wanted to achieve. We've literally written the book we always wanted to read, the book we will continue to read, and the book that I think many other people will continue to enjoy. And we wrote it for ourselves as much as we wrote for others. And I think we really achieved that.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to further cement and push that nail even further down what you just described there, the effort that you put into this book, like you put into your training career, you'll realize a potential in you that you never existed. You truly distill and metabolize the lessons, you think about it in reference to your trading day. There is an evolutionary leap for yourself as a trader. So superficial, high-level reading of the book, just for the joy of the stories. But as you mentioned, your notes, taking, thinking, distilling, synthesizing, the depth that you provide that book, there's no reason why you cannot take on the journey and the performance aspects of every single one of those traders and their learning lessons. We capture the things of those roadblocks or what to be aware of. And so that Traders of Our Time, chapter 1, is available now for those who want to just whet their appetite deeply before the book gets released on the 27th of March, 2025. It's an incredible book, if I have to say so myself, and super excited to share this with the world.
And for all those watching it now and in the future, and if you've enjoyed, for example, chapter 1 that you've downloaded, I know myself and Alex would love to know your comments. in the section below. So let us know. Read chapter 1. Let us know your thoughts, your reactions, your feelings, or however they may come thick and fast. We'll be happy to know them. So please let us know. And Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bogdan.